are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Why did the libertarian cross the road, she asked, and to which I replied, because he turned his back on his anarchist roots, and the voting booth was on the other side. Welcome to the show. It's Toward Anarchy. I'm Michael Storm. Thank you so much for joining me. It's Saturday night. It's prime time. We're all around the world right here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Truly, thank you. It's my pleasure, and I appreciate the fact that you take the time, that you're here, and people do every single week. It's amazing. It still amazes me. Some interesting things along those lines happened today, and I will get to that. But first, I want you to know where you can find me. I'm at Toward Anarchy, just about everywhere. Facebook, X, Instagram, certainly. Sounds like TLB Talk is coming back. That's awesome. I can't wait to be represented there again. And wherever you find us, wherever it be, please hit that like button, or even better, the subscribe button, and make sure to follow along whatever I'm saying, whatever silliness I'm into, like my little poetry right there. I'm just thinking about voters, and last night was the debate, the first debate, which wasn't much of a debate. It was just sort of two guys sitting there and sending jabs back at each other, and not very good ones either, because neither of them are sort of squeaky clean at all. Follow along at towardanarchy.com. As always, whatever I'm into, whatever I'm doing, you can find it there. And support the network, please. I couldn't do it without you. The network can't do it without you. You are what makes it worth doing, and you keep us doing it each week, every single day. I'm just here on the weekends. There's all the other voices across the network every single day, and all the work that goes into bringing them to you. It's not free, and it's not cheap. We do it as cheaply as we possibly can, that's for sure, but it takes some funding, and thankfully you've been gracious enough all this time, all these years, to continue to support the network. republicbroadcasting.org. Click the donate button over there on the left-hand side. Otherwise, give a call, 800-724-2719, extension 3, and you can speak with somebody and talk about the different ways that you can support the network. Also, shoprbn.com. That's the win-win, where you support the advertisers who advertise across the network and make it possible for us to do this at all. As I said, go to towardanarchy.com to follow along, and if you do, you will find that we're looking for June 29th, and you'll see it's a topic you've been waiting for, whether you know it or not, whether you know it under this name, whether you've had the conversation from this point of view. But my guest today will be David Greenberg. We're going to talk about conditional acceptance, and that, of course, is the sort of legal and lawful way to alter a contract or to begin a contract negotiation when somebody presents you with a contract. And in our business-run world, our business-owned states and lands and properties and police stations and just everything across the board, it helps to be able to know how to manage these contracts, because that's what you're getting into. This is a conversation that we hit on a lot. It comes up a lot. I touch on it because I absolutely believe that it's true. I understand it to be true. There's no reason that it's not. It's right there in the paperwork. It's right there in their laws. It's just a matter of getting the right complaint, the right statement, whatever it is, response, in this case, a conditional acceptance. That's basically where somebody comes to you with a contract and they say, we want to do this, this, and this, and you do this, this, and this, and then the outcome will be this. And you say, well, okay, fine, I will agree to those terms, but I'm going to need to do this. That's the conditional acceptance. And what it can do is it can make it tough for the sort of legalese criminals to try to chase after you for unfounded debts, try to make you appear in court. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do it, and you have to be careful with these things because it's always a roll of the dice or a flip of the coin when you get in front of the system anyway. And when you bring arguments like this in front of a judge, they may not know what you're talking about. They may not understand. The higher up you go, though, and that's why you push it off. You make them put you in front of a court that recognizes the law, how these contracts is what it comes down to actually work. And we'll get way into it, and we won't even have enough time for it at the top of the hour here with David Greenberg. It's going to be a fantastic conversation, and it's going to be one that we're going to have have again and again. June 29th there at towardanarchy.com. I want to talk about a couple of things before we dive into what's up there, because there's plenty. I have the anarchist audit for you. It's all about government protection. It started off in a neat way. And a quote, if this one hit home, so let's do this. If I'm honest, I'm a little depressed by the fact that acknowledging that everyone has a right to be who they want to be and live their life how they want to live it, as long as they're not hurting anyone else, should merit any kind of special award or special mention, because it's common sense, isn't it? That was David Tennant who said that just a few days ago. In fact, he was receiving an award. If you don't know who David Tennant is, it doesn't matter. He's an actor. He played one of the Doctor Who characters. He was the 10th Doctor, a huge fan favorite. And he may be gay himself. I'm not sure. He definitely stands up for gay rights and has made very valid points, including stepping up and standing out against the loony bin part of the sort of LBG. There's too many letters. Just throw the rest of the alphabet on there. And maybe a couple of numbers, too, and a plus or minus. The hell do I know? I support these people in so much as David just said there. You have the right to be who you want to be as long as you're not hurting other people, particularly as long as you're not hurting me. If you're hurting other people, that's not good, but it's not my problem. And this is a little bit of a hard pill for some people to swallow when it comes to the idea of libertarianism or voluntarism or anarchy. And it comes from the inside or the outside, whether you subscribe to one of those ideologies or you don't subscribe to one of those ideologies. It's a hard pill for them to swallow that it's not my problem, that you don't have to be involved, and that you technically, if you hold one of those views, you shouldn't be involved. You shouldn't get involved. It's not your business unless and until you're directly asked by someone who has been injured, who has been damaged, who has been wronged, to help them in recovering damages or whatever it is. There's so many possibilities. It's why anarchy doesn't profess to answer these things. It professes to give you the freedom to figure them out for yourselves and to deal in terms of natural law and consequence for your actions. And most people are willing to accept that, but those tougher, I'm the first to admit it, right? That the anarchy's not for everyone. And there's a good point in that we might get to up there in the anarchist audit. I reached out to a lady this week who just wrote a book who says that the law is not what we should be looking to better our society. She says solely, of course, but maybe we'll get her to take it a step further and just to admit the truth about the law. We'll jump into that. But there was a couple of really interesting things that happened. One, of course, last night was that debate, and boy, was that fun. They're both full of it, but if you want an honest review of it, I watched the thing. I watched it all in between just sort of doing the normal pacing and dickering about of things that I do, cleaning and pressing comic books, packaging stuff to be sold. It's rolling. And I'm listening to it and paying attention, and really it's just two old angry white guys throwing jabs at each other and blaming each other for the problems that are created ultimately by the system. Neither of them really has any effect over what happens. There's minor things here and there, but the larger sense of things they have, unless they made massive drastic changes to the size and scope of government, there's nothing that they're going to do in office. They don't offer anything new. There's nothing. I think anybody who watched it knows that Donald Trump won it. Both of them were, they'd lie and tell half-truths and make misstatements. And you can analyze every word, but I don't think that that's necessarily going to help you, not in the realm of politics anyway. Why would it? It hasn't in the past. Knowing the issues and what's important hasn't made any difference in understanding how to get good candidates into office to make these changes that these statists seem to want. I don't know that it ever will. There doesn't seem to be, what was the George Carlin joke about just ultimately why Congress, why these people haven't been able to do anything is because they're not special, they're not different. They're idiots, they're morons, they're fools, they gamble with other people's money, they take chances that they shouldn't take, and they think that they're better than other people, and they represent the general population. I will tell you every time, if you want to understand why things are the way they are, you just look in the mirror. It's really the simplest solution. Voters, whenever they say that blank person, it's this problem is blank person's or this party's fault. This is what happens when the Democrats are in office. This is what happens when the Republicans are in office. The reality is what's happening right now is what happens when you produce absolutely no wealth. That's the system, the government. It produces no wealth. It just transfers wealth. And feeds off of it because it charges you a fee to transfer the wealth. And a lot of that transferring wealth isn't just a fee, it just goes right to them because about half the population works for or is otherwise on the government dole. So about half the population is picking up for the tab for the other half. And that's just naming the people who work. That you can actually count. That's not counting the people that aren't working that you're picking up the tab for already. This is what happens when you produce nothing and then you take control of the economy, particularly by dictating the currency and what people can exchange with each other, how they can conduct these exchanges using the currency. You print that currency, quotes around the print because we just add zeros now these days, but you print it out of thin air because there's nothing backing it, there's nothing supporting it, so it's a debt instrument, and the value of it is dictated to us, and that's what we're forced to use for exchange. This is what you get. This is socialist monetary policy. The fact is, this is government. That is government. Government couldn't survive if it didn't control the economy. There'd be almost, theoretically, we can voluntarily fund government. But we're never going to prove that because government has to rob us, because government has to continue to grow itself and to justify itself. And as it does that, it gets bigger. It's unable to control more and more of itself, let alone the things that it's saying it's setting itself up to take care of within society. And it gets too big, it gets too bloated, it gets out of control, and there's just no place. The other day I looked up laws that somebody challenged me, of course, because they were saying something about challenging the constitutionality of something in the government. In this one item in particular, I don't even remember what it was. What's the point? When I went and looked, what I found is that when we're talking about the government breaking the law of the Constitution, the constitutional law, the one that it's supposed to abide by and supposed to be held accountable for, that it does it so many times that laws have to be overturned so many times that there are just pages and pages. Just scroll, or flip. If it's a book that you're looking through these listings, I'm sure you can get one. Some government printing office somewhere has got to make some money printing up the BS that they create to give themselves jobs. It's just ridiculous. It was ridiculous that I was challenged because it was like. It was a big newspaper, something that I was responding to. Newspapers don't have a website anymore. It was I wish I could remember which one it was right off the top of my head. It's just mainstream media, but it was one of the bigger names. It's recognized. It was just commenting on it and saying that the government breaks the Constitution all the time. So what's the point? What's the good of this? They do things that are unconstitutional all the time, and all of these leftists jump in there, and they're all leftists. It was definitely a leftist rag. Almost all of them are. I don't need to follow too many of the right-wing ones. I really don't, because the things that they're doing, that they're into, the left-wing rags are talking about them. So it's actually a better way to find out what the right is doing by going through the left and finding what they're going, oh my God, and scream, they're doing, they can't handle it. Oh my God, what are these crazy right-wing individualist people thinking about now? These constitutionalists and these oh God, just so many names, so much hate thrown back and forth at this point. That list was just insane. That list of laws was just, I couldn't believe. I mean, I know it, but just scroll after scroll after scroll. If I happened to think of it, did I? I don't know. Maybe I did it. I could look here. I had there's so much to talk about. I shared so many links with myself this week. I do this to make sure that I keep them and that I have them. And sometimes I can do half of the work that I put on the website there at towardanarchy.com just by posting the link in there and then typing something in. And I'm not seeing where I grabbed the link and threw it up there, so I couldn't even begin to go back to it. It's unfortunate. If I do find it again, though, if it does come up again, it was a government organization. It was one of the government sites, and it was listing the just all these laws that had been overturned. I didn't think about it at the time to capture the link, but maybe somebody will comment on it again or bring me back to it, tell me what an idiot I am, because that's what I did. Within a split second, I typed in something into the browser to bring up this list, and it's not that important right now, but I might share it with you again if I can find it at some point. TowardAnarchy.com, June 29th, the anarchist audit is there, and there was just these couple of things that happened to me personally this week that I thought were really cool, and I thought that we should talk about. One was sort of a weird but fine dream of mine for more than 3 decades, but 35, 36 years, somewhere right in there, and that was to get and honor old number 33. And that's you don't know who that is. Not number 32, not Jackie Robinson, right? That's right? No, and wasn't O.J. Simpson, wasn't he 32 as well? 33, old number 33, Al Bundy, the man himself, the greatest sportsman of all time, 4 touchdowns in one game. 4 touchdowns in one high school game. Just one of my favorite television shows of all time, Married with Children. Just one of the greatest, funniest. It's so much like a cartoon. It's like a Bugs Bunny cartoon come to life. It's just hilarious. And unfortunately, the internet has narrowed it down to 10 to 20 minutes because that's literally what there is. There's about 20 minutes of Al Bundy insulting fat women and making fun of Marcy Rhodes and the jokes, some of the jokes. And so a lot of people see that. And most of the reactions that I see are particularly positive, but then there are some that are negative, and that's funny to me because the show was on for 11 years. There are 200 episodes of the show, 200 half-hour episodes of the show, so 100 hours, and they've whittled it down to 10. There's a 10-minute chunk that Married with Children themselves does, and then there was another 20-minute chunk that I saw probably years ago of just Al Bundy's insults. And if you reduce the show to that, it's not, it's funny, but you don't get a lot of the jokes, and you don't get the rest of the story. But what happened was I finally, after all these years, I broke down and bought a number 33 jersey, and it says Bundy on the back, and it says Polk High on the front, and it's number 33. And it was inexpensive, and it was actually stitched on lettering and stitched, the numbers and everything are stitched on. It was just a really nice jersey. It was less than $20. And I saw that, and I pulled the trigger. I had to have that after all these years to be able to have that. And I didn't have it on. I didn't wear it. I got it in the mail, and I was on the way out the door. I threw it on and went to the gas station, and the first person who saw me complimented me on it and was just, I love Married with Children, and then his partner there was, I don't even know what that is. What is that? You got to school him, you got to school your bro. You got to take him and watch some of this Married with Children with him. So that was neat. Just really, truly, years and years, just something to put a smile on my face and a little a tingle in my heart. Just a comment on the Star Wars situation. It's bad, but it's not as bad as everybody thinks it is. Just some stuff for the geeks here for a minute. It all leads to something. Trust me. There are a lot of complaints about Disney, the Acolyte, and I don't get it. So I think Star Wars fans. I'm doing the Nixon quote thing. I think Star Wars fans are full of it. I think they want more than they can ask for. Go figure that. And, these people who chase Disney around and chase these things around. I'm a fan, and I know the stories, and I follow along, and I just don't see. They say Disney is pushing an agenda. And I'm just talking about the Star Wars movies. I don't even. There's Marvel, and there's everything else that they do, all the children's stuff, all the cartoons, everything. Just the Star Wars stuff. That there's an agenda, particularly about the Acolyte. Well, if there was, I missed it, and I still watch the show, and I bet you I can tell you more about what happened in the episodes than the people who caught whatever this message is that they're supposed to be catching. I understand, I know, I'm one who can and does do it. There you go. That I see these things, I read through these things, but not when I'm just trying to be entertained, and not when I'm trying to just find a reason to make a political point or to call somebody out on something. When again, Disney is not one person. It's not a monolith. It's you talking about Disney in the terms of it being bad necessarily, or completely useless, would be the same as myself talking about the Bible, or there are other examples of these things that are considered Christians, anarchists, we're considered monolithic. We're considered inside a very small, narrow vision of what those things can be and actually are, and so it minimizes them to almost nothingness. It completely ignores everything else that exists within that reality, and it's the same with the Disney thing. It's the same with all of Hollywood. Stop it with this Hollywood sucks, Hollywood is terrible, and then cheering on your favorite movie. And you do it. I know you do it because there's it. What's the one with the Henry Cavill? That one with where he's rescuing the kids and all that. That's still a thing with the right now. Why isn't this on Netflix? Why isn't it on Hulu? Why isn't it on Prime? Where is our movie? Where is our movie? Well, just to stop for just a second right there while we're talking about it, there is something on Amazon Prime that you have to go and watch. $3.99. Jones Plantation. Remember Larkin Rose? He was back at the end of last year. He dropped in to tell us about the movie. It's completed. It's available everywhere wide now and on Amazon Prime. And I watched it finally this week. I dropped down my $4 and sat here and watched it. And it's funny. It's interesting to consider. And of course, anyone who understands what the state is, the analogy that very thinly veiled one really comes through to you, and you get it. It's worth the $4. It's worth supporting them as creators. You talk about wanting to support important movie creation. You can do this. Stop thinking of Hollywood. Stop thinking of Disney. Stop thinking of Star Wars in terms of them being a monolith, because they're not, and they're not expected to meet your expectations. And if you're not finding something of value in this space, inside that place where you've created the monolith, maybe you want to step outside of it, because there's plenty of it out there. Let me put it another way. There are better things for you to spend your time concerning yourself with than trying to demonize Disney or Hollywood in particular as being one monolithic creature. It's not. That's just what you're presented. If you want to attack a monolithic creature, where is your disdain for the state? Where is your disdain? Well, we know you have it for the media and the press. Go after them. They're the ones that present the world to you through a filter. What Disney does, what Hollywood does, what the millions of people that work in just those two places alone, inside and outside, directly and indirectly with the industry, you know better. That's all I can tell you. You know better than to just take it and stick it in a box. You take that idea and stick it somewhere else because it's worthless. It's not suiting you. It's not suiting anyone. And again, there's better things to talk about. Just find something better to talk about. Who cares? But I, geek that I am, and there's at least some small portion of people out there that pay attention to this stuff, and I just want to say that it's just not that bad. If you haven't watched The Acolyte yet, Disney isn't selling an ideology or a narrative unless it's just kind of piss poor storytelling, because that's what it really amounts to. When I started watching The Acolyte, it's 5 episodes in, so it's been on for 4 weeks now because they dropped 2 in the first week. And I watched each one as soon as it was available. And the storyline is predictable. It's easy to spot exactly who's important, who's not, it's very, very basic. There's nothing exciting about it, and there really wasn't even anything good in terms of battles until it's not a phone call I need to answer. It's amazing, and it's just amazing that I do about 2 hours a week of recording total. The rest of the week, my damn phone will not ring. But yeah, as soon as I'm doing something like this, there it goes. I'm not even joking about that. It's not even a joke. It's not funny. My phone doesn't ring all week long. Nobody calls me. I don't need to talk to anybody. The people that I talk to, I need to talk to, I basically talk to on a daily basis. Every once in a while, one of my business partners sends me a text. Let me know today, in fact, that, and I kind of already knew this was coming, but one of our largest competitors in the area is going out of business. He's closing shop. And it's a big opportunity for us. And speaking of the shop, that was one of the other things that happened. It was really neat. I went into the store on Wednesday, and after a few minutes of being there, there's a phone call, and my partner answers it, and then he starts to hand it to me. And I was like, "What are you handing me the phone for?" Nobody calls. Again, nobody calls me. Not here, not there. Nobody calls me anywhere. I don't answer the phone. I don't talk to people on the phone. But it actually was for me, and it turns out there's a listener of the show, listener of the network, longtime supporter of the network and listener to the network, Rosalind. She's up in New Jersey, and she listens to the show. She's followed the show from the Sunday time slot here to the Saturday time slot, and she's a fan, really likes the show, and trusts me. Based on talking about the things that I talk about and projecting the person that I am through this microphone. And so, she's going through life issues, and we all are, and a lot of people across the network are. Everybody, we're doing our thing, our day-to-day, trying to get through it. And she's having some issues, but there's comic books involved. And she thought, well, who do I know that's into comic books? That Michael Storm guy on Toward Anarchy, he's got a comic book shop. What was his comic book shop? And she looked up Hooked on Comics in Topeka, Kansas, and she grabbed the phone number and called, and she's sending me some comic books, and I'm going to look through them for her and try to find somebody to buy them. It sounds like an interesting little collection. I hope that they're in really good condition so that I can get the best value for them. A niche collection, that was what I thought was neat about it, because they're Harry Crumb, stuff like that. If you know anything about comic books and comic book creators, you understand what I'm talking about. They're literally underground comics is what they are. They were her husbands, and, life, those sorts of things. It was just such a neat, fantastic thing to do. If you stop in, say hi. If you're ever in the area, if you're ever coming through Topeka, Kansas, stop in the store and say hi. You don't even have to buy anything. No pressure. Just one more quick thought, and then we'll do the anarchist audit there at towardanarchy.com, because this has come up. This comes up over and over again, and this is about another listener, actually, to the network, and somebody, a fan of the show and a friend of mine on social media. And Rich, he listens to the show, listens to the network, and he is like a lot of other people. He likes funny, and he gets jokes, and he'll share things, memes, statements, just like we all do. And he shared one yesterday, I guess it was. And he, I get it. So it's this screaming child throwing a tantrum on the floor of the grocery store, sort of 3 or 4 year old throwing a tantrum on the floor. And the statement is that this only happened once, right? This was in my youth. This only happened once. Well, I never behaved like that, so I never had to do that. But that there were other things that I got a belt for. And I didn't raise my children that way. I've hardly put a hand on a backside, anything, more in a loving way than a painful way or hurting way. Even though I was raised with corporal punishment, I did not raise my children that way. And my children are completely respectful and never once did anything like that. None of my children did anything like that, threw a fit in public because they didn't get something that they wanted. And so, of course, I know that it's not true, that you don't have to punish children to do this. And let me explain why this is so important. Because obviously that anger, it builds up, it breeds, it it comes out in other places. The child themselves will have bad relationships, and potentially, obviously, you can come out the other side of it. You can do better, but it can be pretty tough. It helps if you separate yourself from it very early on, as early as you possibly can. That's how it works. But there's no learning in it. There's not for being abused, and that's what it comes down to, by someone you love, because they don't understand it. They didn't understand you asking them not to do the thing that they've done, to go along with what it is that you've said, whatever it is, for whatever reason, whatever excuse. Then how do they understand being hit? All they know is authority. That's all you're teaching them, is that there are certain people who, when you say something, if you don't do it, they're going to punish you for it. And that's just not really true in most of life, and it's not the way we get along outside. And so you're not building a good basis for raising your children when you do this. And the fact is that a 3 or 4-year-old throwing a fit in public, throwing itself on the ground and screaming and banging its little hands on the ground and kicking its feet and trust me, I've seen it. I've seen it a million times. I shop in Walmart. I see it on the daily. It's a thing that happens, and it angers me because the parents are to blame. If your child is doing something like that, it's because you've already gone wrong with your child. You've already made the mistakes that put you in this position, and being angry, hitting that child, is definitely not the way that's going to fix it. I assure you that it's not going to fix it. I know from experience, I know from people, I know from just the general sensibility of speaking to someone and having them understand you, let alone the idea of understanding why you're hitting them. It should be a tool that is almost never used. Yeah, you should have it. Okay, so the reason my children have never done anything like that is simply because of the fact that, one, I raised them properly, so they don't do that. I didn't deny them things that they wanted, and when they didn't get things that they wanted before the store, they were told that that's just how things go. But they also understand that I'm not... It was funny last night when my wife was lying in bed and the cats are up there. We have a couple of cats. And they're females, but it doesn't matter. Any cat, they'll do it. The boy cat, my daughter's boy cat, BOYCATT, boy cat. He does the same thing. He's just always around the queen, and she noted that, they're just always around. They just always want to be around the queen. And so, yeah, I know how they feel. I understand. That's why, and they know that, and they understand that, and that's how they are in nature too. They're always around the queen, the mother lion, because the mother lion is the one that provides for them. And they know that they are protected by and maybe just a little bit, almost, I don't know, possibly loved by the crazy pacing back and forth lion over there. That's me. I'm the crazy pacing back and forth lion, and they understand. My children understand that that's not that it wouldn't fly. Obviously. The pacing lion over there tells you that that's not how we behave around here. We don't act up around here. We don't act up anywhere. When we want something, we need something, we're displeased with something, we use common sense, respect, decency, soft words, encouraging language, but we didn't discuss these things. They learned them from the use. And it just doesn't seem like it's just that big of a deal. One thing that happened yesterday I wanted to mention, because I think it's important. So the Supreme Court ruled that after-the-fact gifts don't constitute bribery. This is a big thing. The Supreme Court is going wild right now. I could have done an entire show on the Supreme Court, but why? They're just going wild on things right now. There's a bunch of stuff. There was another thing. They closed their session. And what was it? Oh, it was, the January 6th thing. That's what I was trying to remember. It was about the January 6th thing, and it's one of these, it's just another decision by the courts that has basically put, all of these people who've been convicted who are still waiting on trial for January 26th, unless they committed, actual violence against somebody. These claims that there was an insurrection or that they were trying to actually stop the election aren't valid because they didn't actually try to destroy any paperwork or anything related to the election, and then that's what the law says, and that's what they've been using to convict these people. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Their conviction should be overturned. Obviously, the state should not be able to imprison people who act out against the state, especially when it's something. You could get into some specific detail. Oh, I suppose I better find out what this is. They get into some specific detail about it, but comic books that just walked in the door. Yummy. See, every once in a while I get a text from a business person, my business partner. TowardAnarchy.com. Let's get into this government protection. And so what brought me to this was interesting. You're looking for June 29th. It's the Anarchist Audit. All you have to do is just scroll down just a little bit. And I just shared a handful of articles, and 6 of them, it looks like, half a dozen. And I could have shared 24 of them with you this week. If you see the Rumble video, you might see me scroll through the messenger to myself. I message myself to save the links. It's just easy to do. I can do it from anywhere. I can do it from where I found him on Facebook or on anywhere on my phone or across the anywhere across the computer. I can do it anytime. I just take the links and I just pop them up there, and it's just link after link after link after link after link. And going back to, I don't know, years, I've never stopped it. I've never tried to see how far it goes back, but I've been doing it for years, and I have this wonderful collection of all these articles and things. Some I shared and some I haven't. These 6, though, speak to this idea of government protection, and it's one of the big things that supposedly government is for. Is it's supposed to protect us. It's supposed to protect us. It's supposed to protect our rights, and it claims to do so, but it fails to do so almost across the board. It claims to protect free speech, but of course they're the first ones to silence anything critical of themselves. That's what I was just saying about the government shouldn't be able to prosecute people. That this is ultimately what happened on January 6th. It should fall under First Amendment. It should fall under Declaration of Independence. It should fall under the people doing what they do to get their government to pay attention to what's going on out here. And of course, government's response is generally going to be the opposite of what it should be, and that's to criminalize the actions of these upset people, these people that are done. Instead of addressing the issue, turn them into criminals, say that it's illegal, put up fences and barriers, create division among people. That's why it really likes it. It loves the division. But so, of course, government's the first one to speak out against any so-called free speech protection. They're the ones to jump right on it and try to stop you from being able to do it. And, of course, they used the social media system to manipulate free speech and to try and silence people who had any bit of information against the COVID narrative. That's certainly one of them. Any number of things that unless you've really gone through all the files, there's not really any way to know. There's probably so much. Again, that list, you just keep scrolling of government abusing its own powers, the ones that have even been laid out before, let alone all the abuses that goes behind. One of the big stories, I'll definitely share that one with you next week. It just was about how the police, how the surveillance state uses the post office to keep an eye on us, and that was an interesting one. But this week, Julian Assange was set free. If you don't know who Julian Assange is, he's the WikiLeaks journalist, the founder of WikiLeaks, and he's the one that released the footage that was supposed to be classified. And the story is that supposedly he was telling people classified information when the truth is we knew about it. We knew about all of these things. He's just the one ultimately being persecuted for it when it comes down to it. And so he finally was set free. He was able to go home. He flew home to Australia after spending all these years in exile. And that's just the good news. That's it. Happy for him. Fantastic, wonderful thing, but it doesn't do anything for us. It's complete bad news for freedom, for Americans, for the First Amendment. He didn't make the government stand up and prove his case. He took a plea deal. Never take the deal, especially when you're talking about rights. You have to do it. I don't know how many people do. I never take the deal. I can speak to this. I never take the deal. They come after me for my protected rights. I have never taken the deal. I will never take the deal. It doesn't matter. I've tried to repeatedly, and no deal. If you want to do this, let's do this in open court. We're going to pack this court, and we're going to make sure that there's a audience for you violating me. He took that plea deal, and ultimately all that does is empower the government to challenge even the most basic notion of free speech and protection of freedom, freedom of the press. It falls in there, all under that First Amendment. And it was neat because as soon as I heard that was my immediate thought, and then I suppose a day later or so, Reason popped up a piece about the legacy of Assange's prosecution and what it'll be, and that's basically what they're saying is the same thing. Is it's all fantastic, it's wonderful, it's great for him. There's absolutely happy for him to be home, but unfortunately, we lost the battle. He won his freedom, but we all lost that battle, and we're losing the war. I was sitting at my desk, much as I am right this minute. What did I just do with the little thing? It's so small. Okay, there it is. I was literally sitting at my desk the other night when this news broke, and I was building one. There's this toy line called the Miniverse, and a lot of the toys are toys. Well, almost all of them are toys that you assemble. That's what makes them fun. My favorite toys are things like Legos. Because you build them, you get to do something with them. They're not just, you don't just look at them. Although I do have a whole lot of itty-bitty little plastic men staring at me right now. But ultimately I do it so that I can build the models, and that's the same with these Miniverse toys. And I happened to get one for Father's Day the other day. My oldest daughter has a whole bunch of them. She has several dozen of them, if not more, that she's made, and they come with resin because a lot of them are foods. You make a food dish. The one that I was doing is churros, so they're just these little pieces of rubber that look like churros, and there's a fancy little plate and a cup, and there's chocolate, and that's what the resin is. It's the chocolate, and it's it's photosensitive. You expose it to UV light for a short period of time, and it freezes in a position, and you can color it with different colors, and it's really neat for making drinks. And so you can make soda fountain drinks, and there are just all these different foods and things that you can make, and the fun part, of course, is playing with the resin. But they recalled them. It's 22 million, I think, is what they said. Was it 20? 21 million, yeah, 21 million Miniverse toys recalled, and of course that's government protecting you. But what it really is sort of say dumbass parents letting their dumbass kids breathe it in and to burn themselves with it. It's chemicals. It's chemicals. And if you are buying this stuff for your children and you don't know what the hell that you're buying them, why are you buying it for them? You don't need protecting. You need less protecting. I mean, that's a terrible thing to say. You don't need to be a drain on the system, a problem for what's not a problem for anybody. This is half a dozen at most. I got the link here. Jeez. 26 reports of kids and adults who were harmed, and I think only just one case someone's asthma was triggered. That's what I was thinking of. And 21 million toys, 26 people. There are 18 recalls on the car I drive right now. It's all usually minor, simple stuff that nobody is ever going to have to worry about. And a hassle dealing with dealerships to get stuff replaced. Look, they can't protect you. It's not protecting you. What it is protecting stupid people from the consequences of their actions. And again, hard pill to swallow for people who care about other people. And I do care about other people. They're just not my problem. The government can't protect you, and it's most likely the thing to violate you. They're the most likely ones to violate you. We get violated by people around us occasionally. We get violated by government constantly, all the time, if through nothing else than the economy, but certainly through taxes, through the various taxes and thefts, robbing us on the street for speeding, controlling our movement in general. Just the stoplights themselves are really a violation of your ability to travel, because the implication is not that they're stopping traffic. Stopping traffic is worse for traffic. Keeping traffic flowing is good for traffic. So stopping traffic is about control. They're called traffic controls for a reason. They don't really control traffic. Well, of course they do. They make traffic stop here and there. But what they really do is they create a pretext under which you're violating not stopping in traffic, whether you need to or not, whether you create an accident or not, whether you're involved in an accident or not, that you can be violated by the state for it. So they have all these incentives to rob you and cage you if you don't comply with them, ultimately kill you when they're trying to make themselves a paycheck. And people get snarky with me. They call it hyperbole when I say the police will kill you for a minor traffic violation, but that's a mic drop. That's what the sound of that is, because it happened again. It happened again. And it continues to happen over and over again, where some pig, some scumbag acting under color of law kills somebody for a traffic violation. They claim that they violated traffic laws, they chase them around, and when they catch up with them, they kill them. Sometimes they kill them in catching up with them. I've seen so many of these videos of these cops doing pit maneuvers, chasing somebody through traffic for half an hour, endangering countless lives, whereas they would never have been a problem before. In 99% of the cases that they're chasing people, it's about speeding, it's about them being disrespected. And I don't know how many times I've seen them pit maneuver somebody, and you know that the person is dead or they're seriously injured, and it's just not necessary. All they did was speed in the first place, and then you're chasing them. You're chasing them, causing the situation. That's called escalating the situation. That's exactly what people like myself talk about when we talk about the police don't prevent crime. They show up to the scene 9 to 13 minutes, 20 minutes on the outside later, and escalate the problem. That's exactly what somebody seen speeding or being reported for speeding or even drunk driving when they haven't actually gotten in an accident and caused damage to somebody would give cause to stop someone, to say that you violated someone. You actually have disturbed the peace. You've caused a problem. Unless and until all they do. It was the same. I commented on this another video here a couple of weeks back. At most, this cop stopping in the middle of the highway. There's already a broken down car right there. And instead of pulling right up behind him or getting a tow truck or doing any of the things that would suggest to somebody that maybe they need to slow down or worry about what's happening, she parks directly behind the broke down car and somebody runs into her. It doesn't matter why they did it. She's literally adding to the problem. She's literally creating more problem, and she's been called there to resolve the problem. She's been called there to help the person that's broke down on the road, if that is actually what happened. If she wasn't just pulling them over and that's where they stopped and she got out. Either way, she's out of her car that's parked directly behind this car, both of them in the middle of the highway, one lane blocked. What do you expect is going to happen, regardless if somebody's been drinking or not, regardless of whether they had to glance over their shoulder to change lanes or look, even if they look down at their phone? It's your fault. You're the one that's in the middle of the highway. You're literally in the middle of a high-speed road where there's almost nowhere else for somebody to go. What do you think's going to happen? That's the problem with cops. They just make things worse. They don't prevent crimes. Government can't protect you. They pass all these laws claiming that they protect us with them, but we know that these laws are just scribbles on paper, that they're these political and social opinions that are used to generate revenue for the state, to pay the people that they pay to rob you and to make claims against you in violation of the laws that they created to raise revenue for themselves, to pay the people that they pay to rob you. Do you see that I'm going in circles here? This is what's happening. That's exactly what government does. It justifies itself, it pays itself by robbing you and making you a victim of the things that aren't crimes, things that aren't violations of other people and property, things that actually disturb the peace, things that actually cause problems for other people. You know what the problem is when you see a drunk driver driving up ahead of you on the road? You know how you avoid that problem? Stay behind him. Or get out of there. That's how you handle that problem. Call the cops, whatever. Maybe it's the best thing to do. We don't see that. We know that people drive drunk all around the nation, all around the world, all the time, constantly. There is always somebody driving drunk. There is always somebody speeding. Occasionally, the police stop and catch somebody who is speeding who may have been a harm to somebody. Occasionally, they catch a drunk and they stop them and maybe they were going to harm somebody. But they never actually stop any crime. They don't prevent anybody else from driving home. They didn't prevent the accidents that do happen. And they don't spend their time concentrating on the justice for the people who have been violated. They spend their time trying to figure out how many charges they can make against you or somebody else so that they can get a bigger paycheck. That's what they do. Laws aren't what we can rely on to sort out society. All these articles are up there. I reached out to this author of this book that this article is about, and hopefully she will agree to come on the show. I don't know, let's see. Let's look real quick. We're running out of time. We're literally down to the last 2 minutes of this show here. Let's just see real quick if there's been a response. She was in Italy or something like that. Up to date. Everything is up to date. No. So no response yet. That's okay. Not an issue. I don't expect responses that quickly. So sometimes it takes forever. They don't come back forever. Like months later they'll be, hey, we wanted to be on your show. Oh, that's fantastic. I was ready to talk to you months ago. Let me see where I can squeeze you in. If you need some more proof that the government can't protect you even when it has a mandate to do so, free speech and rogue pigs acting under color of law, violating a citizen for exercising the free speech. It happens all the time, all around the nation, just like all of these other violations, and it's costing taxpayers millions of dollars. That's what these First Amendment auditors are all about. They get paid constantly for being violated by these pigs acting under color of law. Sorry, act like something else. Do something else. Don't pretend that you aren't aware of the fact that you are violating somebody. Let's start there, and then maybe we can stop calling you pigs and start thinking of you as people. I have a lot of respect for Judge Judy. You know that I believe that she is absolutely what would be a good representation of what justice in a stateless society is without the state in there, because she does what our legal system is actually supposed to do, which is adjudicate disputes between real individuals regarding violations of person or property. She is that example of what justice will be in the absence of the state. And again, she proved her legal chops to me when she called out this Trump hush money trial here last week. Maybe it was a week before. Sometimes I end up sitting on the links, but the link to what she said was there. Yeah, she called it nonsense, and that's the best thing you can say about it. What it really is abuse of justice, abuse of the justice system. It's monetizing and weaponizing, further monetizing and weaponizing the justice system. Trump made a bunch of comments about it in the jabs that the two of them spent giving each other last night. good luck, statists. Enjoy that little circus that you're into. That's it. We got to go into the second hour here and get into this conversation with Dave Greenberg. We're going to talk about conditional acceptance. This is a conversation you do not want to miss. We will be right back. Stick around.
25 years and my life is still trying to get up that great big hill.
We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Off we go into hour number 2, towardanarchy.com to follow along. As always, look for June 29th, and there you will find information about my guest, David Greenberg. And you can check him out. We're going to have this wonderful, fantastic conversation coming up right now. And when you like what you hear, you want to know more, you have to go to conditionalacceptance.com. And you can also follow David around Freedom Vibe Art just about everywhere else, at Freedom Vibe Art. And that information, of course, will be up there at towardanarchy.com. David, man, I'm really glad that you were able to take the time to come and chat with me, because I don't think that we would probably be friends on Facebook if it weren't for the topic that we're going to talk about tonight, conditional acceptance. It's an interesting topic to me. It's a legal topic. In case the listeners don't know what it is, it's sort of a pre-contract thing. You know, somebody comes and makes you an offer, and you say, well, I'll agree to that. We can set up a contract. We can make these terms if you'll do this. It's conditional. And then you begin the contract process. That's the sort of legal thing. But we're going to go maybe a little further, right? And see how it can help individuals in sort of everyday dealing, not with just with other people, but with the state and all these different matters. So I'm curious to see where the thing goes. Just one of these interesting topics that I know a lot of the people across the network are really interested in. So I think they're going to find this to be very interesting. So really great to get a chance to chat with you.
Yeah, Michael, I can reciprocate that. It's a pleasure to speak with you today, and I can see that you've obviously been giving a lot of thought to all of this. I'm very enthusiastic about this process, and I actually I think of conditional acceptance as a life skill. Okay. And I think it's going to be a real game changer. And as you said, it's not just with respect to, it is largely about reclaiming our rights through understanding what's happening in commerce and the fact that everything is really just a commercial offer to contract. Including in the context of government, but also all the banks and everything. So yes, that's a big part of it. But it's also, as you said, it's really just a way of being in life. Instead of being combative, instead of disputing or arguing, we're just conditionally accepting. So then everything in life becomes a negotiation.
Right. No, that's great, because just back a couple weeks here, we had the anniversary of the whole Killdozer thing, the Marvin Haymeyer thing, and his claim is that reasonable men sometimes have to do unreasonable things, and I don't believe that's true. I believe that the reason a reasonable man is reasonable is because he's reasonable all the time, and that's why we have success in society, despite all of the limitations and interferences with government and the bankers.
100%. I think one of the biggest things we learn, and I'm sure in your work you deal with this as well, is we always want to respect everybody's free will. No matter what people come at you with, Now, obviously, if someone's coming at you directly and is trying to cause you harm, you would have to defend yourself, right? But if someone comes at you and says, well, I want you to do this or that or the other, which is, we could argue, is 90% or more of the human interactions, is people come asking you to do things, either to do or not to do a thing. So we're basically entering into contracts, even micro contracts, even like non-written, oral contracts. So ultimately, what we're learning through conditional acceptance is you don't have to just agree to everything, but there's kind of a way, there's kind of an art to how you respond when people ask you to do something, especially when they ask you to do something either is wrong or is questionable, or it's just not something you want to do, right? Just because you don't want to do it. So with conditional acceptance, it's kind of like you're reframing everything. So maybe we can come up with an example. So you work with a company and they say, well, you've got to get jabbed to keep working with us, right? So some people would start fighting that. No, there's no way I'm doing that, blah, blah, blah. And I get it. Like, I agree with the sentiment. But another way to approach that is you could go to directly to speak with the CEO of the company or the HR director or whoever you're dealing with. And you could say, thank you for offering to amend our agreement whereby I need to get a jab in order to continue working with the company. I'd be very happy to do this under the condition that you can prove to me that the jab is 100% safe and effective and doesn't cause any bodily harm at all. As long as you can do that, I'm happy to get that.
Good luck with that.
Right. So what you're doing is you are setting the boundary. And you're putting the ball back in their court to prove that what they're asking you to do is legal, lawful, moral, right? They have a right to do it. It's not causing harm, and so on and so forth. If they can, that's great. If they can't, which obviously you and I know in this case they wouldn't be able to, then they're kind of stuck, right? Because you've said, I'm happy to get the jab as long, once you prove to me that it's 100% safe and effective. So we're not arguing. I'm simply saying under what conditions I'll accept your offer. So that's how
pretty important, I think,
yeah,
for people to understand. It may be a little late for some people, but again, as a life skill, this going forward and this idea of just negotiating to get to a place, whether it's for understanding or for actual action. And in the case of all these people that had trouble with their employers during COVID, and this idea that they might have to get jabbed over it, if they had already understood this, they could approach their employer and say, that's fantastic, but we're talking about legal things here. You're pushing a legal matter on me, and here is my response to that. Here is my condition to that. We already had a contract. You've come to me and you're making changes to the contract. You're wanting to change the terms. Well, here's my conditions to that as well, to agree to amend the contract. Otherwise, we have to stick with the original contract. And in a lot of cases with these employers, especially people, I imagine, like nurses and people like that, there could be big penalties, nurses, doctors, somebody like that. There could be huge penalties, CEOs, that come along with them failing to meet the contract.
Yep, because there's always an agreement. Like you said, a contract is based on so when I talk about contracts in my work, I pretty much only talk about contracts under common law. And I don't know how much you talk about common law in your environment, but that's pretty much all that I refer to it. So one of the things that we know from common law contracts is there has to be full disclosure of terms, there has to be lawful consideration. In other words, something of value is given by each party that they deem lawful, they deem acceptable. And then, of course, mutual consent. Nobody can be coerced or duped or deceived into entering into agreement. So when employers, like you said, I think you described it very well, Michael. I mean, they're essentially trying to change the contract.
Yeah. Well, I suppose
yeah.
for a lot of people that actually is a little bit of a problem, because I suppose the average person doesn't really have a contract for employment. A lot of people, you don't really sign a description of what it is
Sure.
or why you're employed. The best you might have is the employee handbook, and that's definitely something that I just kind of had to get this in my head while I'm thinking about it. There is a employment lawyer, an HR type lawyer guy that I've been following around recently. I'm going to have to get him in to follow up on this conversation.
100%. Yeah, it'd be interesting. I haven't spoken to any actual attorneys.
Yeah, this is one of these guys that's an influencer. You know, you see his reels or his TikToks come across there, and he's talking about, terms of getting fired and being able to do something about it in terms of contracts and things like that for employment. And that's why I had to get it in my head as I'm thinking about it. Do that. Make sure to do that because it's a great follow up to this conversation.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I always talk about is the processes that I teach. And when I'm teaching people, it's designed to keep them out of court. In other words, I'm helping people to find a remedy. Remedy just means getting out from under a law, getting out from under the law, which might be wrongfully oppressing you, without going to court. And I think there's a lot of good reasons to do that. Right now, in the let's just talk about the United States. In the United States, since 1938, courts have all been commercial. They're no longer common law courts. You pretty much will never find a common law court anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you get lucky, you might wander in a courtroom where the judge actually understands it and you can make an argument for it, but they go by their commercial codes. And there's methods through getting through that to UC1 and other things, but another conversation.
Yep. So what I'm trying to teach people is what's happening is I'm trying to think of a good example. So we talked about the employer scenario. Let's talk all about a more common scenario. So you get a credit card bill in the mail. Well, most people don't understand that what just happened. Most people think of bills as like this negative experience, like stressful, like I've got to pay my bills. Well, I'm not, in no way am I telling people don't pay your bills. All I'm saying is that you need to understand what that actually means. What is a bill and what does it mean? What is payment? So a lot of what I do in my work is we clean up the understanding of terms because there's been so much obfuscation about how things actually work. And of course, that's all done to the advantage of the bankers and those who keep everybody in the dark. So a bill is a bill of exchange. And a bill of exchange is a very, very old concept. It probably goes back into antiquity. It was back in the time when merchants would, trade with each other. And it was basically one of the original forms of credit. So the idea is if a merchant came along and acquired some goods, but he wasn't able to pay, let's say with gold and silver, which is what you would expect, like actual money, he would basically pay with a bill of exchange, which is basically, I promise to pay you a certain amount of gold coins, in exchange for this at a certain time, right, in the future, right? And it's payable to the other merchant, whoever he was trading with. So now the merchant B who receives this signed bill of exchange, that is treated like money. They treated it like money because he could go to merchant C and say, well, look, merchant A owes me 100 coins. He's promised to pay. So here's the proof. And he could use that bill of exchange as an essentially a negotiable instrument. That's what we call them now, to go and acquire goods on credit. Right. It's just amazing. So now what the bankers did, circa 1933, when they took away the gold standard, they just have us starting to use bills of exchange, promissory notes, and unconditional orders to pay, which are negotiable instruments. It's just that nobody really understands that every time we sign a document, that's what creates the money in the system, versus the old way where you had like hard assets, gold and silver, which is how it is still per the U.S. Constitution. So nobody's really dealing with money anymore. We're just dealing with exchanges of notes.
Well, yeah, and the point of that is that there's nobody to ever actually go and fulfill the note. The note can never be fulfilled.
Right.
With the original concept there, it's an individual. As an individual or a corporation, somebody representing a corporation or group, somebody that you can go to and say, this is the person that made the promise. Here's the piece of paper they said they made the promise. That's that legal contract. That's that thing that you take to an arbiter and say, here's my claim. Please judge this claim based on its merits and find for me and make this man pay me, or otherwise damage his credit or his stature, or take his business, or whatever it is that you have to do to cure.
Yep. And nowadays, other than going to court, the main way that we enforce these contracts and these agreements is through what's called claims of lien.
Right.
And that process still exists. It is lawful, and it doesn't require court approval in order to file a lien.
Yeah, you just go down to the offices there and file the paperwork, and then it goes from there. Before you could actually sell it, you would have to have somebody legitimately determine whether. And I guess it varies from place to place what those rules are, but generally speaking,
correct. Yeah, most of it's done through what are called, there's different ways to do it. There's the UCC1 and 3, which is filed with the state office, the secretary, I believe it's the secretary of the state of the respective office, wherever the lien debtor lives or whatever their address is based, you would file it in that state. But you don't need to court to approve that. But that's something you obviously want to do only if you're not able to resolve the matter. So with conditional acceptance, before we get to that point, the idea is we send an affidavit, we send a conditional acceptance, and we say, in the case of a credit card bill, it would be something like, thank you for sending me this bill of exchange. I hereby conditionally accept your offer to tender payment under the condition that you accept my signed instrument per UCC 3-603, 3-104 is 3-603, which is basically negotiable instruments and tender of payment. So they have to accept it per the UCC, which is the statute that governs all banks pretty much worldwide. If it's a fiat-based currency, it's running under the UCC.
And it's a uniform commercial code.
Yeah. Yeah. So people, it's hard to read the UCC, but we really need to come to understand it because it's basically what the bankers created to kind of modernize this law merchant that's very old, bills of exchange and so forth. It's been around for a long time, and they wanted to create a uniform basis that then they could apply worldwide, which is effectively what they've done. So it's really important for us to understand, at least to a certain level, how that's operating, because we're being pulled into the jurisdiction of UCC every single day. And certainly when you go to court and when you receive a bill in the mail, it's all based on how the UCC works. So
and it's not understood by people, and that's what you mentioned, that they're all commercial courts now. That's what it's about. Yeah. It's about, and that's what the capital names are about on the credit cards and all the documents. This is that Strawman character that's been created for you that represents your legal business, you in that UCC area, in those commercial courts, and so they're doing business with your entity and not actually you, and that's part of the managing the conditional acceptance, is that you are presumably trying to represent what you need as an individual within those contracts, and as you being the real person behind your capital letter name there. I'm expecting this person to call back. It was my father-in-law. I have no idea what he might want, but he probably doesn't know I'm in the middle of doing something.
Cool. No sweat, Michael. So you mentioned the straw man, and that's exactly what's going on. And in my latest video, I talked about how there is no interface between corporations and living men and women.
Right.
Because living men and women, we operate under common law, which comes straight from natural law. So we have unalienable rights. Those rights come from God. They come from creation. They're built into reality. They're not something that's conferred on us, even by the Constitution. The Constitution is just reflecting what exists in nature. It's not conferring rights on us. And certainly no government ever confers rights. So what happens is, to get us into this issue where we have to perform, we have to behave a certain way, the only way to do that is to get us to identify as though we are a corporation.
Yeah.
And so the main way they do that is they create this fictitious corporation, which exists only on paper. It's done shortly after we're born through the signing of a birth certificate. It has our name. So when they say, are you Mr. Greenberg, or are you Mr. Storm, or whatever, like, they're tricking you, because you think they're referring to you as the living man or woman, but they're actually referring to you, your name in all capital letters. So they're trying to get you to identify, like, yes, I'm the corporation. So once they get you to say, well, I'm a corporation, I'm acting as the corporation, well, then you have to obey. A corporation has to follow all the guidelines that corporations are supposed to, which is the UCC, it's the U.S. Code, it's the Federal Reserve Code, any other codes that you could, or statutes, the CFR. These are all written for corporations, not for human beings. Human beings have very simple rights. Don't harm other people, defend yourself, always be honorable in your word, keep your word, don't deceive people, and just always act, in measure to the circumstances. Right. So it's basically, you could learn common law in 5-10 minutes.
Sure.
You don't have to go to law school. But statute, on the other hand, is extremely complex. But that applies to corporations. So as you pointed out, when they create this when they create this straw man, or some people call it the all caps name or the ens legis, it goes by many names. That's not you. It's just a commercial vessel that has been given your name. Right. And even more than that, in common law, you can copyright your name. So now if they use it, anyone who uses it, you can charge a usage fee. You can go back and clean that up and say, well, I see you're using my copyrighted name. I charge $500,000 per usage. So here's an invoice. Right. And that's done through what's called the secured party creditor process. One of the steps of which is you declare a common law copyright. It's a very detailed document that you can create. You file it in a certain way. You don't have to go to court. It's not the same as a trademark. You don't need to hire an attorney, but it is copyrighting your name. And then you have the right to invoice individuals who use your name without your permission. So you're starting to take back control of your name.
I'm just shutting it off.
Sure, it can be a bit of a distraction.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, he probably needs something, but he's just going to have to wait.
Yeah.
He's clearly not dead, so it'll wait for a little bit. The whole conversation about what you can and can't do is limited in these situations when you go into the courtrooms, or when you're in these commercial courts, and I just did a show here a couple of weeks ago on just kind of generally on the commercial courts, and that it's a worldwide thing. That was what I was trying to explain to everybody really in that conversation, was that it's not just something that happens here in America. It's something that happens everywhere, and it's happening all the time. And they know better how to play the game. And the point of that is that when under the certain codes, or when you don't declare yourself to be an individual separate from the corporations, you are limited in the arguments that you can make inside their courtrooms.
Yep, and that's why I recommend, to the greatest extent possible, try to stay out of the court.
Yep.
Now, I do know that sometimes people are kidnapped, what they call arresting, but it's actually kidnapping, right? Which is obviously a form of a violation of common law and natural law. But if you do find yourself in that situation where you're actually in court, what you want to do is you don't want to agree to be in their jurisdiction, because ultimately, if you keep challenging their jurisdiction, they're going to have to throw you out of the court. Like they can't proceed. And you'll see that there have been many, many cases where people have done that. And that you would start off by saying the first words out of your mouth. You shouldn't let anybody speak. You say, hey, I need to say something before we continue here. And then the first words out of your mouth should be without prejudice. And that comes from UCC 1-308. What that means is, in commercial law, what happens is when you receive all these benefits, the way it works in commercial law, it's like almost the opposite of natural law. Like if you tacitly agree to receive all these privileges, well, then you're expected to perform on the other side of that. So essentially you're giving up your rights. So without prejudice, what you're saying is, well, I'm happy to, have the privilege of discharging my debts instead of paying them with money. I'm happy to exceed all his benefits, but I'm also reserving all my rights at the same time. I'm not giving up any rights. And all you have to do to do that is say without prejudice. It's built right into the UCC. So
there's a couple of little phrases like that you can use in your daily life that can protect you from things. It can protect you from things like bad checks, other people's bad instruments by signing on the back of a check that you receive from somebody else. You can write without recourse. And that limits your liability, your legal liability, and in the UCC courts to whether or not if that check bounces, you're technically not liable for it. You can make that argument.
Yep. Yeah, you're taking back all your rights when you do that.
A bunch of little tricks like that with just daily things and dealing with instruments and exchanges. And anybody listening to this show realizes that just about everything is an economic exchange in one form or another.
Yeah, see, the bankers who created the system, like they know natural law exists, so they know they wouldn't be able to create a system where there was no way out of it.
Yeah, right.
So they always hide the remedy.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing now is, and this is one of the reasons why I'm pushing, teaching conditional acceptance so much is, we have to take responsibility to see our way out of it. Nobody's coming to save us.
Well, I mean, it really goes along with that whole notion that you don't have rights unless you stand up for them. If you don't know what they are, you can't stand up for them. If you don't stand up for them, you don't have them.
I agree. We need to, that's called exercising your rights or asserting your rights. And so conditional acceptance, a lot of it has to do with asserting rights. And that's why when I teach my workshops, the first thing we go over is natural law, common law, and what your rights are. Because the way I look at it is if people can't articulate clearly what is and is not a right, how are they going to be able to ever claim their rights? So we always start with the foundational work. Whereas I think other people, and I'm not bad-mouthing anyone in particular, but sometimes people jump in and try to get into all the technicalities of, how to free themselves. Oh,
yeah, they just hand you the reclamation manual, right. That big old thing. It's thick. Here you go, have fun.
Exactly. And I think people can sometimes stumble upon a remedy that way, but ultimately It's a losing proposition. I think when you start with the foundations, you're setting yourself up for success because now you have the foundational material. And then anytime someone comes at you with an offer in the future, you're like, they just made me an offer in commerce. It's voluntary. So now I just need to figure out, what the offer is and you decipher it because often they use cryptic language and you have to decode it a bit. You have to define the words, and then you can go back and say, well, great. Now that I know what the offer is, I conditionally accept it. And here's my conditions of acceptance.
Well, and the trick is to not paint yourself into a corner before you understand what the remedy is in that particular situation. And a lot of that has to do with not picking your battle on the street when they do try to come and cage you for something. The cop doesn't know what you're talking about and doesn't care. So why fight with him? Keep yourself from, you never know where to draw the line. That's the trick of it all. You really don't know where to draw the line because they'll kill you for any minor infraction if you don't eventually obey them. So, as much as it might pain one to say so, you just you take the ride and you beat the rap later. What they say. You might beat the rap, but you're going to take the ride anyway.
Yeah, what you can do, for example, and I would recommend people read a book called, there's a couple of books I recommend. One is Meet Your Strawman. You may or may not have read some of these books. Meet Your Strawman by David Robinson. He also has another great book called The UCC Connection. And then there's a third one called Cracking the Code UCC, and I can't remember the author off the top of my head. But in that third book, I remember there's some great examples of dealing with policy officers that stop you because they're just policy enforcers. They're just enforcing corporate policy. You're absolutely right, Michael. You don't want to get into a confrontation that could only end badly for you. What you can do is if they initially refuse your your counteroffer, like I don't want to do business with you, or I'm not in this jurisdiction. If they just won't accept that, then you can, if they threaten you, you can just say, oh, that's a completely different matter. Okay, so under fraud, threat of violence and threat of duress and coercion, I accept this offer, right? Because what you're saying is this is a fraudulent contract, but you're being coerced into accepting it.
Which is unfortunate because under natural law, you don't have to declare a fraudulent contract. A fraudulent contract is obvious. Sure. A fraudulent contract is one where is in any situation, obviously, if somebody comes and demands that you sign any piece of paper, whether it's an agreement or not, and does so at the barrel of a gun, that is default not a contract. That's not a lawful legal contract under natural law by any means. Nobody would look at it and go, okay, that's legitimate. Let's start from that point. They would back up to the point where the person violated you to begin with, and you would say, well, that's not a contract that's valid. Why do we have to have any further conversation about it?
Yep. So if they give you a ticket, let's say you get like a moving citation, obviously don't sign it if you can avoid that.
Yeah. If they make these days, they'd sign it for you anymore.
Yeah. I think they're not even asking people to sign it because more people, they know what's going on.
Yep.
So let's say you don't sign it, but you take it, you just return the original, you keep a copy, and you return a conditional acceptance, and you say, prove that we entered into a voluntary contract. Just, prove that there's a voluntary contract where we both signed it. There's lawful consideration and so forth. That it's going to get removed. Like you'll never hear back from them. I've heard.
It's interesting. I've seen it. I've seen people make arguments, some of these arguments in a courtroom before. And when a judge is expecting it, what'll happen is the last name could be Alvarez, and they could be going alphabetical, and he's going after Z. He's going after the last Z, and everybody else is out of the courtroom. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't seen that in particular, but I know that judges, I've heard a lot of stories that judges start to get real nervous when they know that the person knows what's going on.
Yeah. Well, because they really don't. Not really. Most of them don't.
The higher ups, I think, know more.
The higher you get up,
And I recommend everybody follow the work of Cal Washington. I'm not sure if you know who Cal Washington is.
Not off the top of my head.
He's originally from Canada. He now has U.S. and Canadian citizenship, but he basically stumbled across this because he was dragged through the courts in Canada for divorce proceedings, child support and alimony. And, he wasn't a deadbeat dad, but he was looking for a fair deal in an unfair system. And I would just say go watch his work because he discovered that he basically realized it was all commercial. And when he started presenting these large negotiable instruments, to bond the case, he literally had one case where a judge literally ran out of the room because he didn't want to be subject to, this negotiable instrument, this bond against him. Because I think in one case, I don't know if this was the one, but he's made bonds of $300 million. Right. And presented them in court. So you should definitely go watch it. One of his interviews. He's all over YouTube.
Because that's the important part, right? Is that the as I mentioned before, about the idea of exchanging the negotiable instruments is that it's traceable back to an individual who takes a claim of it and is willing to meet the terms of it. It's the same with these legal contracts in the courts. When you present the judge with the notion that you are not going to ultimately agree to these base terms, that you're altering the terms and that he has to accept it, then it puts it in an individual's hands. There's a person that you can point to and you say, this person is responsible for the actions of this entity against me personally. And that's when you can get his bond.
It's personal liability. You're absolutely right. And that's a big part of what I'm teaching is, stop thinking about these nameless, faceless corporations, government entities, courts. They're all corporations, but stop worrying about them and start thinking about the individuals that are doing this, because someone is always responsible.
Well, that's it, right? Yeah.
And when we can start to interface with these individuals. So if you get a lawsuit from say, American Express, what that means is you need to enter into a contract with Stephen Squeri, who's the CEO of American Express.
Right.
He's the one that's ultimately responsible for everything that happens in the name of American Express. Okay. He's the guy that you need to have a conversation with. So he's the one that you need to send a conditional acceptance to, because essentially any offer made in the name of American Express you can think of it as an offer that he's made you personally. And when you start to reframe things in that way, it changes the context. Same thing with court. The judge, as a man or woman, is the one that's making you the offer. Okay, so they're the ones that you need to conditionally accept, and they're the ones that need to perform and respond to the offer.
Yeah. That's the claim process. That's what natural law is about, is that when you have the claim of a violation, it's an individual. It's somebody that you can point to and say, this person is responsible, whether he had other people hired under him, whether it was a certain property or a certain place or a certain time, it doesn't matter. He's the one. He's the person that created this contract or exists in open just in reality. He's just here. That's him. There's not any other, and you approach them with the claim, or you come to your insurance company. Of course, this show here is about anarchy often. Most of the time it's just about me rambling on. But, of course, I try to explain to people that Judge Judy is a better representation of the law than what most people think of as the law, what most people experience as the law, because what she does is she's an arbiter of people who have complaints against other real people who've made a claim against somebody else, and she arbitrates based on those claims, not based on stare decisis or any previous necessary system-made claim to a case or a situation. It's actual about here's the person, here's the damages. This is a claim. Prove it. That's the guy that started it first, the original one, Judge Wapner, he always wanted the receipts or whatever. You got the receipt, because that says everything. That's the agreement between you and the person that you bought something with. That's your contract. That's I sold you this, you paid this for it. Everything else that comes with it could be conditional, but in general, because it could be spelled out somewhere, it could say on the receipt, see this place for other terms or something like that. But generally speaking, you agreed that you give me this, I got this, I gave you the money for it, it doesn't work. As I was saying before we were so rudely interrupted, I was talking about, so people sort of poke a little fun at me when I say something about Judge Judy being a better representation of what the law is or what the law should be. When people ask me what a stateless society, what the law would be like, what justice would be like in a stateless society, I answer Judge Judy, because that's what she does. She looks at those, you got damages, bring me the pictures, show me the pictures, and then show me a market valuation of the damages, and let's discuss why it is you believe this person is the person that did the damages, and let's hash it out on a personal, individual level. What you're talking about here is just pure anarchy.
Sure. And I think the reason why most people have so much difficulty conceptualizing that we can live in a world without all of these rules and regulations and everything is because the occultists who run the world, and they are occultists, they have done a really great job of tricking us into thinking that things are much more complicated than they are. And they specifically, that's why in education, I passed by my old high school yesterday, and I was thinking about this, like I never learned anything that was really important. I never learned natural law. I never learned common law. It could have been taught in a few classes. That's how simple it is. So once you understand that the rules of engagement in society are actually, you could count them on two hands, probably. I mean, maybe even one hand, depending on the interpretation.
Yeah, right.
Then you realize we don't need all these rules and regulations. Those exist for corporations, not for human beings, right? If you can just grasp the few simple rules, which include the ability to arbitrate when there is a dispute, right? But part of the reason why, there's so much dispute and so much controversy is people don't, they're trying to abdicate their power.
They're being
trying to
represented.
They're trying to delegate their authority. So they are essentially acting like children, which is the way the court looks at them, the modern court.
Yeah.
So no wonder we need all of this process. But when you realize all you have to do is, not harm other people, not steal their property, be true to your word and stand up for yourself and your own rights, and always act in prudence, in proportion to the circumstances. And that's really all you need to do in life. That work, as long as everybody's doing that, everything's worked fine. Yeah, I'm not saying there won't be cases where people will try to break the rules, of course. But it's like a system that has an immune system that's working. When your body's immune system is working properly, it can deal with any threat. Right? Of course there are threats. There's probably way more threats to our health than we even realize. But we just don't notice most of them when we're healthy, because we're eating well, we're sleeping, our body's like, I got this.
Well, the lie is that we can't do it without them. That's the lie, that none of this would work, that the
parasite.
The only
That's
reason it stays
mindset.
Together. What's that?
That's a parasitic way of mindset.
Yeah. Well, that's what they are. I mean, they don't produce anything, do they? The bankers don't produce anything. At best, you can say that they produce a kind of wealth through their manipulations of real wealth. But that's the best that you could give them. And then, of course, the system, the government, it absolutely produces nothing. It produces war, but that's destruction. That's not actual production of something. It's the appearance of doing something sometimes, I suppose. That's all they have. That's the only thing that they can do, is create a system that protects them from their ignoring our rights, from manipulating the markets and everything around us. People don't really understand, I guess, when we tell them that the corporations rule the world. They do, but in so much of a different way than the sort of leftists would, the leftist socialists would have you believe. And, every CEO, every billionaire is just a horrible guy trying to take advantage of you and his workers. And it's not quite that way. It's actually worse than that.
Yep. So the next time you walk past a bank on the street, as we all do, like yesterday, I was walking down the street and here's Chase, here's Bank of America, and here's this bank and that bank. So now you can reframe the way you look at it. When you walk past that bank, you're going to realize that they're not lending money. That's not what they're doing. They're not lending money. When you sign a note, like a promissory note, like a loan contract or a mortgage or any of those, you just created the currency from your signature.
You lend it, yeah. They're lending you.
You're the creditor.
Yeah. Right.
And the bankers know this because they set it up basically that we're basically the collateral that backs the dollar. When the gold was taken away, like there has to be something backing the currency. Well, it's us. Because we are, human beings have infinite potential. It's not a bad bet when you look at it that way. But the confusion comes around when you think that you're borrowing something when you're not. You're the creditor. You're the one that's
it's your
loaning.
word. Yeah, you're signing that instrument. You're the guy that's saying, I agree to pay this.
And that instrument, it becomes the money. I'm using the word money loosely because it's not real money. It becomes the money of the system. That signed loan contract. So when you sign a mortgage, this is why all mortgages are a fraud, 100% of them. Because when you sign a mortgage, it's paid in full the moment you put your signature on it.
As soon as you put your signature on it, yeah.
Right. And then they just do what's called a banker's endorsement on the back to receive it and to deposit and exchange it for Federal Reserve notes of the same value. Yep. So they just got paid in full, and then they're going to collect your payments, which means they're going to get paid twice.
And they get paid twice, yes. Yeah, that's where...
Up to three times.
When you know these conditional acceptance things and stuff like that, where it can benefit you if you had to walk away from a mortgage or something like that, you can actually walk away and tell them you've already been paid. You have the property, you have all the money I gave you, you have all the money that was given to you by the bank in the first place. I owe you nothing.
Right. But you have to put it on them to prove that there is a debt.
Yeah.
Right. And to prove that it wasn't paid in full. You always have to do it. You have to, the best way to do it is to put it back on them. Have them.
Oh, yeah. Make them go do all the work. Even the most simple of the sort of responding to a claim that you owe somebody money is that will prove that you're the person I owe anything to. Prove that I signed anything. Please, by all means, let's start there.
I rarely get calls like that, but when I do, and if someone does, I would say just start asking questions. So they say, you have a balance with us. Well, what do you mean by balance? A balance just means that there's an account that has one side of the ledger more than the other. So how can I have a balance? I'm not a bank. What are you talking about? Oh, you owe a debt. Okay, sure. I'm happy to pay that debt. Just send me proof that we have a contract with wet signatures from me and another individual, and a proof of the accounting where I actually received something of consideration and to go into the contract. And sure, I'm happy to. I'll happily pay once you do that. Right. So you're taking away all the controversy. You're not arguing with anyone. You're just like, sure, just back up what you said. Prove it.
Yeah, prove it.
And proof
and that's all that the court's
specific.
Going to say when they go into the court too. If they were to actually take it that far, that's what the court's going to say to everybody too. Generally, we're talking about conditional acceptance, and we're talking about kind of detail. Really, that's one of the catches of sort of credit cards that they can get you on in certain debt instruments is that the fine lines, the things that people don't read, the fact that it'll be adjudicated in our jurisdiction. Right there should tell you that you might not want to sign a contract with somebody when they demand that the adjudication of the process or any dispute ends up in their backyard and it's with their judges in their friendly neighborhood.
Yeah, that's also easy to deal with because commercial jurisdiction only deals with corporations and corporate vessels. So when you make it clear that you're not the corporate vessel, they can't pull you into that jurisdiction because it no longer applies.
Right.
The only jurisdiction that human beings can be judged, if you want to put it that way, or it can resolve disputes is under common law. Right. So that's the way to handle that. So when you get a lawsuit, you didn't get sued. The trust or the vessel got sued. The all caps name, the Strawman. That's why you notice on 99% of these documents, your name appears in all capital letters because it's the trust in the corporate.
It's not an
vessel.
Accident. It's not easier to read. That's proven.
Because it's not correct English grammar to write a name in all caps unless it has a specific meaning, and the specific meaning is that it's the name of a corporation.
Yeah, it doesn't represent. It's not you. It's not an entity, and that's. I talk to people. It's a little confusing if people don't understand this, but we live in so many different layers of reality. And that corporate layer sits on top of the natural law layer and intertwines with it and has found its way.
It's below it, actually.
What's that?
It's below it.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah.
I'm
looking at it from the top down, and of course, we're on the bottom in this situation, right? We're the plebes at the bottom of it all. No, you're absolutely right. It should be flipped. That pyramid should be flipped. We're all at the top. They're all at the bottom. So yeah, I actually will make that adjustment now from now on when I say that. They will be on the bottom. That will be a further down. I likened it into like physical Like, this is the ground, I can touch it, so I'm building up from there. Real layer, we're here, and then corporate layer of BS here, legal layer of BS here, another corporate layer of BS here.
Yeah. So the easiest way to think about it is natural law is at the highest level, and then common law comes below that, because common law is like it's basically the articulation of natural law in human terms, in a way that's
practice of it.
Yeah. And then our sovereignty is basically under both natural and common law. And then comes below our sovereignty is commercial law. So it's lower. And the reason is because corporations and government were all created by us. And some people say, we created government, which created corporations. I mean, you could split hairs on that. Ultimately, we created both. So that means everything that happens in the commercial world or related to government is subject to us. Like, we're the authority. It's like we're the god of government and corporations. It can't go above us. So if you think of it that way, it's very easy to keep it clear in your head.
Yeah, that probably is a clearer picture for the people who are listening. That's wonderful. I'm glad that you pointed it out that way, because it will make my future explanations. I really talk about this stuff a lot. I slip it in there into many conversations because I absolutely know that it's true. What you just said is 100% true. That's the way it stacks up. These things, these entities exist under us, not above us. They don't rule over us. They want to. They try to. They try to put themselves into us. They try to make themselves a replacement for those law layers that naturally would exist above us, because they exist for everybody. When you're getting when you're going further down that stack, you're getting to an individual, and the individual would exist under the law and common law. Natural law being ultimately things that you can't avoid consequence for. You may get away with it for a while. You may deny gravity exists for a while, but eventually it will catch up with you. You will find out that it absolutely does exist. You can go around screwing people over, robbing them, taking their money and their property until you can't anymore, and somebody meets you in the alleyway with the baseball bat, and you can't do any more.
Exactly. And the thing is, we need to, it's like what happens is, as you start to retrain your mind about how it all works, as government agencies, or as you start receiving these offers, again, it's like you're able to deal with it differently, even in your own personal life. Like, if someone in your life says, you should do this or you should do that, you don't have to fight with them. You can be like, okay, I'm happy to do that as long as you agree to this. You tell me I should do this, whatever it is. I should wear a mask. Let's say someone comes up, you should be wearing a mask. Okay, I'm happy to wear a mask as long as you can prove to me that number one, you have a right to tell me what to do. Number two, by not wearing a mask, I'm actually causing harm to an individual.
Well, if you can prove
and that I don't have a right to breathe fresh air.
Yeah, well, I might accept it as being a moral thing to do, the right thing to do. Oh, well, I actually am protecting other people by doing this. Do me a favor, David, tell the people where they can find you, what you got going on. If they want to know more, what's the best thing to do to reach out to you?
100%, Michael. So I invite people, the best place to start is to go to my website. It's super easy to remember. It's just conditionalacceptance.com. And from there, you can find a lot of links. You can sign up for the free workshops, because I run free workshops almost every week on Zoom, where I teach kind of the A to Z of this process. And then on the website, you'll find links to my social media. I'm also on YouTube. That's the main platform where I'm sharing videos. It's also just @conditional acceptance. So it's easy to find. And I'm also on other social media. If you just search either my name or conditional acceptance or conditionalacceptance.com, you're going to find. Yeah,
if you search conditional acceptance, you're up there. You're like me. You own your corner of the world. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
the only thing that you get mixed up with is college acceptance.
Yeah, I noticed that, but I'm actually pleased at the performance of the keywords because I think it has been somewhat co-opted, like you said, by that, but not completely.
Not entirely. No, it's not quite the same phrase, but it's actually, I mean, it can't hurt because you know how people search. You know, especially, short attention span college kids, conditional application acceptance, conditional application, all those things, it could potentially put them in your direction. That's really cool.
Yep. So that's the best way to find out. And then I just invite people to come, the best way to start other than that is just come into the Telegram group. Again, the links are on the website. Come to a workshop. And then from there, the path will reveal itself.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. I do as well. Thanks for having me on.
The problem is all inside your head, she said to me. The answer is easy if you take it logically.